Welcome, everyone. Come on in. Welcome to today's webinar. Hi, everyone. We are going to have a full room as you are all coming into our webinar. I would love for you to introduce yourself. Thank you, Michelle, in the chat. Please share your name, if you're an artist, the medium you work in, where you're from, arts organization you're from. Lovely to meet you all. The hope sometimes is that maybe you see a neighbor, a colleague, an old colleague that you haven't seen in a while. You can make some new connections. Thanks everyone for coming on in. And we have a full hour ahead with so many wonderful presentations. And so I am going to jump off pretty much on time so we can get started. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself. Keep the good shares going. And I'm just going to do some talking. All right, everyone. Welcome to Healing Through Art, Bridging Hospitals, Nonprofits, and Artists. A few things. Yes, we are recording the webinar. So if you have to jump off early, don't worry. You'll receive this recording in your inbox a few days afterwards, along with the slides and some helpful resources. If you need closed captioning, if you want to access captions, you can do so by clicking the Show Captions CC icon at the bottom of your screen. As you're doing so already, please introduce yourself via chat. And that's also the place to go to if you need technical support. So my colleagues, Helen and Justin, are helping out and will be there if you need any assistance. And please post your questions. We will have time for Q&A at the end in the Q&A box, which is accessible at the bottom, a separate section. If they get posted in chat, they're going to get lost. And so we want to make sure that we can see your great questions and answer them at the end. And as always, you can always contact us here at Artwork Archive via email at team@artworkarchive or via chat. We're standing by. Okay, so that's me on the left-hand side. I am Elysian Kogelmeyer. I am head of partnerships here at Artwork Archive. What that means is that I get to produce these free educational resources like webinars and write articles and do so many wonderful opportunities, create wonderful opportunities for artists and nonprofits and collectors in our Artwork Archive community and beyond. And then on the right is our incredible panel. We are so lucky here at Artwork Archive to work with such amazing creatives. I learn from our clients and inspired by their work daily. So it's a joy to bring them together for these educational webinars. And I'm thrilled for you all to hear from our panelists. They'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves before their presentations. And from this intro slide, I just wanted to call out, given the topic of our webinar, that you'll see from their titles that there is no one size fits all for hospital art programs. Many of you may be asking already coming into this webinar, how do I connect with my local hospital or clinic? Well, some healthcare systems have curators like Antonia on staff that acquire art, receive donations, and coordinate exhibits. And some clinics, may have formal art therapy programs. Some hospitals work with art advisors. Some may not have any of that and instead lean on their foundation or their child life teams to support the arts and to coordinate with artists. So just flagging that, we'll get into a little bit later, but just showing the diversity within hospital art programs. And at this moment, we wanted to take an opportunity beyond the chat to learn more about you all in this virtual room. So Helen is going to launch a poll. It will show up on your screen. You can answer these few questions, just letting us know what describes your profession, if you have any arts and health experience, and we'll share that back out with everyone. So hopefully this provides more of a sense of a community, camaraderie. Thank you for completing the poll, everyone. We'll just give it another minute, and then we'll share it out. We're almost there, 75% participation. All right, great, thank you. Helen, we can end the poll and share out the results. All right, so a lot of you here are artists. Welcome. We have a small percentage of community arts administrators, art advisors, museum professionals, hospital arts administrators, and then some mysterious others. I'm wondering what hats you wear. We were curious if any of you have any professional experience within arts and healthcare already, and wonderful, 30%, 32% do, 64% no, so here to learn. And then have you personally been impacted by the healing power of the arts? 90% say absolutely. And that is what we will get into, the many different facets and ways that the arts impact our health and well-being. And just curious, from the Artwork Archive team, how many are new to us, new to our resources, and those that may use us as an online art inventory system? So we have about a split. So for those that are new to us, welcome. We do this a lot. We love sharing out resources. And for those that are with the Artwork Archive community, welcome back. Okay, Helen, we can stop sharing, get into it. Thank you. So for those that are new to us, a little bit about Artwork Archive. Fun fact, we began back in 2010 as one of the first cloud-based art inventory systems. And we work with artists, collectors, and collecting institutions, like the whole arts ecosystem, right? From start to legacy, to digitize, manage, and share their art careers and art collections. And as I mentioned, we produce a number of educational resources for the arts community, like our webinars, articles, and e-guides. And just to call out here, given the topic, we do work within the intersection of arts and health, providing services for hospitals, artists, donors, corporations, nonprofits, et cetera. And fun fact, we keep on growing. We have users in over 150 countries. So this is global. Okay, I promised our panelists that I wouldn't cry, my Artwork Archive team. But just wanted to take an opportunity to let you know that this webinar is both professional and personal to me. So I've worked in the arts for my entire career. My dad is a painter and an art therapist. He actually wrote a book called Art Heals. My mom was a career-long art educator. The creative process has always been in my blood. But it wasn't until my son, pictured here, was born 6 years ago with a rare genetic syndrome that I truly understood the healing and transformative power of the arts. And your impact, to the close to 90% of artists that are here, your impact as artists. So I quickly and profoundly felt the healing power of the arts when we spent the first 3 months of his life at Children's Hospital, Colorado. And then we became repeat visitors, being there sometimes weekly. So I kid you not, I was actually writing an article about hospital art collections for Artwork Archive the morning I went into labor. So sorry to Justin and my team that I don't think I finished that article because I was a little busy that day. But the first sentence of that article was, at the deepest level, the creative process and the healing process arise from a single source. When you are an artist, you are a healer. And Rachel Naomi Remen said that. And so I wanted to leave that quote with you all. I want you all to hear it and know that, because your work is meaningful. And whether you're an artist making the work or an arts administrator supporting the work, it matters. And the ecosystems of creation reverberate within all of us. And so I quickly sought out Children's Hospital Colorado's art collection while my son was inpatient. It was a scary time. Art distracted me when I needed it, when I was overwhelmed. It calmed me when I was stressed. And later, when Odin could finally move outside of his room, when my son could move outside of his room, gave us an activity to bond over while we wandered the halls. It almost took 50 days until I could remove Odin from his monitors and his cords and take him outside of his room. And best believe the first thing I did was walk him down the hall to see a large painting filled with dogs, because over the days, the weeks, all I was doing was telling him about his fur sister, his doggo back at home that couldn't wait to meet him. So again, bringing art allowed me to bring the outside world in and help share, something important to me and to our family that otherwise we couldn't access at the time. And so very grateful for that. And that is enough about me. Okay, no tears. I made it. I may be preaching to the choir, given everyone who is here on the webinar, but just wanted to take a moment to address why arts and health and the impacts that arts have on our health and well-being. And so there's been a lot of research out there that shows that arts do improve the quality of healthcare, enhancing the patient experience, which thus lowers the cost of healthcare. So more and more hospitals seeing that bottom line and understanding the impacts leads to better health outcomes for the patients. It also improves the wellness of the healthcare team and our caregivers, reducing stress, burnout, and turnover for the doctors and the nurses. And Larissa has a great presentation, and we'll also speak to great work that's being done for the nurses and the doctors on staff. Arts help them as well. Improving the mental health and well-being of our communities. And then wanted to leave with a quote that we share. So I'm also on the board for the National Organization for Arts and Health. And a lot of our work is connecting artists and folks that are interested within the healing powers of the arts to resources and each other. And we just recently shared this wonderful quote, which is that the arts improve our psychology by offering self-efficacy, coping, and emotional regulation. They improve our physiology by lowering stress hormone response. And that's from Your Brain on Art by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. And I also just want to acknowledge, before I jump over to Antonia, who's also a board member of NOAA, that mentioned caregivers, caregivers, whether it's in the hospital or those that are taking care of patients, family members, acknowledging that many of you on this webinar are caregivers as well, whether it's for your children, your parents, loved ones. And so reminding us all here the healing power of arts, giving that out, but also making sure that we're taking it in, taking care of our own well-being. And with that, I will mute myself and hand the reins over to Antonia.
Thank you, Elysian. I feel like you really set the stage why the work we do is so important. I am the art curator at Stanford Medicine Children's Health, and what that means is it's sort of a network. It's the pediatric teaching hospital for Stanford University, but it's also about 90 off-site clinics throughout the Bay Area with their range of specialties. And yes, I do put art in all those spaces. And so if you would, Elysian, next slide. I actually came to the field of arts and health from working in museums. I know we did the poll. There's a few of you on the line. So I will tell you that you can also partner with hospitals from the museum setting. And that's where I started with this show called Healing in Color. And it was a three-way collaboration. So it's sort of perfect for this webinar because it was the hospital that I did not yet work at, but that's where I could find the pediatric cancer patients whose art I wanted to showcase in a gallery setting. And then a wonderful nonprofit organization called Kids in Art Foundation. And they actually hire artists. So for our artists on the line, they have an artist in residency program. Their artists come into outpatient cancer waiting areas to create art with the patients to help to distract them from the stresses of their cancer treatment. And so the museum partnered with them because I recognized that I didn't know what I was doing going into a hospital setting. I didn't know all the rules and regulations. And so finding an expert or a support to help you with those partnerships is really important early on. This would have been the beginning of 2019. And so at that point, the collaboration, as these sorts of things do, outreach lasts a long time before you can culminate with an exhibition. And so sometime in the middle, actually applied for and got the job at Packard. So if you would, Alicia, next slide. I finished that show as an employee at Stanford Medicine Children's Health. And when I started, I discovered that there are so many opportunities to showcase art, but also all kinds of objects and things. So if you're a nonprofit employee here on the line and you have a collection that's maybe a little bit niche and it's not necessarily art, we may have a space for you too in a hospital setting. These vitrines I inherited were all empty and they're huge. They're 26 feet wide and they're deep. So they don't really work for two-dimensional art. I started getting into the collection and discovered we had some weird stuff in storage, a big doll collection, and museums are one place to store things, like it makes sense, but a hospital doesn't, at least not in my opinion. It's a poor use of our resources to pay for storage of things that may or may not work for our current patient population. And frankly, dolls, not really super popular with patients. In this exhibit, we tried to make it a little bit more relevant with Barbie and Star Wars. But to get to the point, I wanted to do a final hurrah before we actually let these objects go, deaccessioning these objects. And so finding a partner organization, a nonprofit who had the expertise to help me with the didactic panels was first and foremost, but secondly, who could help us with the rehoming process for these dolls when they left us. And speaking of deaccessioning, Elysian, she is on it. That's another way you can collaborate with a hospital. Maybe you have an artwork that is leaving your collection, or maybe you're an artist who wants to donate a piece. We do accept donations. There is a vetting process. I'm sure every vetting process is different, hospital to hospital, but we're always open to those conversations. Here on screen right now, you can see the Cantor Art Center, which is a museum on Stanford campus, which is free and great. Go visit it sometime. Donated all of these David Gilhooly pieces to us. They're perfect for a pediatric space, which is our first consideration when looking at something that we might bring into our collection. I'm not showing you on screen here another slide that I could also screenshot in our amazing Artwork Archives database. But that is a slide that would show you all of the loans. So we also take things on long-term loan, not generally short-term loan, because we have to invest a certain amount in the framing to match our standards. The display needs to meet infection control issues. So there's a lot of consideration. So long-term loan, we usually ask for a minimum of 5 years. Elysian, if you would take me to my next slide. This does take us to a rather impressive loan, if I do say so myself. But before we get to the spacesuit, I will say that we started out this partnership with NASA and their Ames Research Center by asking just for some high-res digital files. You can gift a digital file, which can be reproduced depending on the resolution, and to be a beautiful display. And so here we're looking at artworks made by kiddos around the world of what the future of space travel will maybe look like. And my goal was to inspire our kiddos to pick up their markers to draw what they think the future of space travel looks like. So we started with this exhibit, which really cost NASA nothing. But then they said, you know what, as they got to know us, right? They said, oh, you know what, we will give you something pretty cool. So we have a spacesuit on loan from them, and it is a spacesuit that is the cutting edge technology. It is what the first person of color and woman who go to the moon in 2025 will be wearing. Next slide, if you would, Elysium. Okay, so now we've talked about nonprofits, we've talked about museums, we've touched on artists throughout, but I want to now look at 2 artist collaborations that are really 100% artist-centric, artist-focused. This first one with Mr. B, as his students call him, or his formal name, Brendan Metcalf. I met Brendan actually through another artist that I had worked with when I was at the Walt Disney Family Museum. That artist is named Saran Norris. He does the big Blue Bear murals in the Mission District. If you're in San Francisco, you would know. But he said, hey, I can't do this with you, but you know what? My buddy Brendan would be great. So what do? I get on Google, I look up Brendan. So what's really important is if you're an artist and you want to work with a hospital, you got to have a good digital presence, because we're going to look at your portfolio before we even reach out. We're going to make sure that the art that you're already doing is in line with what we're looking for. And in this case, Brendan's stuff was perfect because I wanted an artist who could create a background image that was based at our hospital. This is actually he's taken some liberties, but it's a play area at the hospital that's ocean themed. He's drawing it right there on slide on his iPad. And then he led a series of workshops with our transplant patients. These are kiddos who are getting new organs. And I wanted to spotlight this collaboration during Organ Donor Month, which is in April of every year, so that we can really say thank you to them for giving us the life-saving organs to keep these kiddos thriving. And so we actually are showing you one of our patients. Yes, he and his parents signed the necessary HIPAA paperwork, but you can see he got a new heart. He's actually wearing a heart t-shirt, and he's showing cartoons or characters he drew during workshops with Mr. B, which then were incorporated into the collaborative artwork. Next slide, Elysian. Another artist collaboration I wanted to highlight was actually focused on something that we wanted to do for our staff. So we touched earlier, Elysian touched on the importance of staff resilience. Working in a hospital setting can be stressful. And on top of that, we are actually doing a big renovation project. Our building from the 1990s is getting renovated one unit at a time. And that means moving staff. That means moving patients, leaving behind a space, going to a new space. And there's a lot of emotions that boil up to the surface when that happens, because they're leaving behind memories of what happened in that space, lives that were touched, sometimes lives that were lost. So the staff needed to express that in a ceremony. They wrote down those memories. Those memories were then encapsulated into an artist-made vessel. We worked with these wonderful artists who work in glass out of Half Moon Bay. So yes, we do think locally first, and then regionally, and then nationally. We try to stay close to home. And all the memories could go into the vessel, corked with the dragonfly, symbolic of those memories flying with them to their new space. And our hematology oncology unit was successfully moved to our 5th floor. And I don't think that that would have been a smooth move in terms of the emotional impact if it hadn't been for this artist collaboration. Next slide, Elysian. So I want to leave you, my last slide is really about a failed partnership, because I want to be vulnerable and tell you that not everything is a success. And in terms of the lessons learned from this failed partnership, you need to sign some kind of an agreement, talk things out early on. I call it a memorandum of understanding here. If I had done that, this probably wouldn't have fallen apart. Clearly, the exhibit happened anyway, but it happened without Legoland because they had a change in staff, in personnel. The new marketing manager said, I need to talk to Lego headquarters and get permission. We'd never done that. And Lego headquarters said no, which was shocking to me. But we ended up having to do this without Lego and without Legoland. Legoland was going to use their master model makers to make us some custom made sculptures out of Legos. I ended up using an artist. His name is Tim Bowen. He makes Lego things that are kind of incredible. And that's what we're seeing in the middle of this display here. So it still came together in the end. I am really all over the map with all those different kinds of partnerships. I'm going to now turn the baton over to Kristina, who is our artist here on the panel, and we'll talk very closely about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kristina Davies, and I'm a visual artist based in Denver, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Alicia and Artwork Archive for hosting this. A little background, I was a classroom teacher for 25 years in the public school system. And so my heart is in education, but it's also in arts. And so my master's is in teaching through the arts. And so I saw firsthand a lot of what Alicia was talking about in the beginning, how powerful the arts are in all kinds of communities. And I saw it in my classroom. We danced, we sang, we created together in community, which gives kiddos confidence and freedom of expression, but it also gives them a voice, and it elevates the learning. It becomes more complex. We make connections to other learning. So it's powerful. And I knew in 2019, when I opened up my art studio full time, that I wanted to have that as a mission. Part of my personal philosophy and goal as an artist, to continue to bring the arts to community, especially communities that might not have access to materials or instruction. So lo and behold, in 2023, I was invited by a friend who asked, and we can go to the next slide, asked if I would do an art lesson at Brent's Place. Brent's Place is located also in Colorado, right next to Children's Hospital. And it's a home away from home for critically ill children or young adults and their families who need to live close by to the hospital to get the expert care that they need. So when she asked if I come and volunteer there, I said, yes, absolutely. So the very next slide will show a snippet, just a little crop of an abstract mural that we painted together. Typically when I do an art workshop, I like to begin with abstract expressionism because it loosens up our creative spirit. It's about process and intuition and flow and responding to music and movement in a non-representational way. And I have found that just creates joy. And before you know it, it's been 90 minutes and we've been on a pause. We've been on a respite from everything else that's going on in the world because we're in creation together in community. And so as the slide said, when I left this volunteer experience, it profoundly affected me to to the point where when I left, I was crying the entire way home, and my tears were very complex. They were not out of sadness. They were out of joy because of getting to create in community and just recognizing that I was this stranger coming in, and this group of wonderful patients and families allowed me into their lives, and they shared their stories and their humor and their perseverance and their strength. And I said to myself, I have to do this more. So if we go on to the next slide, that's where, and this is a big message I have for artists, this is where funding and the connections come in. So first, volunteering in a nonprofit, that is extremely beneficial to everybody. Secondly, is finding the funding, because nonprofits are not rolling in dough. Most nonprofits don't have a ton of money to pay for artists. So I found the Sharon Prize grant, and you can read about it on the slide here, but it's a grant here in Colorado that is specifically about building community through art. And so I decided, okay, this is the right grant. I'm going to contact Brent's Place and say, hey, it's me. If you want me to do more workshops, I'd love to. I'm applying for this grant. If I get the grant, does that sound good? And they said, absolutely. And then I contacted Jasmine Chu, who you guys are all going to hear from in just a little bit, at Children's Hospital. And she graciously agreed to host the exhibition. But I sent her a proposal. I mean, I already had my ducks in a row. I had my images of what I thought I might do. I had the proposal. And she said, absolutely. So the first thing I needed to do after winning the grant, which yay, I won the grant, but I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. So I'm very excited about that. And another little sidebar, please keep applying. I just got a rejection earlier this week. You get declined all the time, but just keep persevering and applying as an artist. And so Jasmine took me on a tour of the hospital because I needed to see the space. I needed to see where we were exhibiting. And you can see on this one slide, the rounded hall walls that eventually they're right off the lobby, go into this long hallway. And so I knew I had to create enough artwork to fill up this massive, beautiful Hamilton gallery. But I also took a tour because I wanted to see the Children's Hospital art collection. And what I discovered is that the art is joyful, it is bright, it's colorful, it evokes curiosity, play, engagement. It's a place for patients and their families and staff to find hope, to find inspiration, to find meditation. So my brain already was ticking away with the fact that I would have to do something very different than I do in my personal studio practice to have the artwork be inspiring and fit in a children's hospital. So if we go to the next slide, I began the art lessons in August of 2023. And my very first lesson learned was the first session, 12 people signed up and 1 person was able to attend. And believe me, the one sibling of a patient and I had an amazing creative experience together. But I also was like, holy moly, how am I going to get more people to come? And I realized that at the time, so many people signed up because they thought they could be there, but hey, they're stuck in the hospital. They have a doctor's appointment. They aren't feeling well. And so because accessibility is so important, with the help of Brent's Place, I decided I needed to make kits. So I made kits for every single lesson. And the other thing is the materials had to be brand new each time. That was another learning lesson because I'm working with immunocompromised people. So artists, we're the best at recycling things, right? But no old paintbrushes, no old paint, no old magazines. You have to bring new materials each time. So that was something really to learn and discover. But once we started doing the kits and then the consistency of the programming, I started getting some amazing families that came every 2 weeks. And the joy and what I learned from these families is something that then I felt like I could put into the artwork that you're going to see in just a second on the next slide. So the family and patient art all came from lessons we did together in identity collages, notan, which is a Japanese form of art. We did blackout poetry. We did lots of free expression of free expression painting. And we framed the artwork and put that in the rounded hallways. But then I knew I needed to do the culminating artwork at home once the workshops were done. And so if we go to the next one, I took all the painted papers that the families gave me after each workshop. I said, can I have this? And they said yes. And I knew, and they knew I'd be putting them into a big mural at some point. So the biggest thing I had to figure out is how do I represent all of the patients and families' artwork in a way that preserves their art, but is still something that represents our time together. And so if we go to the next one, I came up with, this is where my math teaching came into play. I came up with a hexagonal pattern, and I tiled the plane like you would when you're tessellating. And the panel was an 8 foot by 5 foot panel that I had made. And I tiled the plane with this homemade, here's the pattern with compass and ruler. And then I figured out how to cut hearts out of all the family artwork and create this symmetrical pattern that eventually turned into this. So this is called Hearts of Hope. All the little pieces of paper and hearts are from kids and their family, so that when they see it in the hospital, they can say, oh my gosh, that was mine. And that was really important to me. I also chose the heart as a symbol because a lot of the families I was working with were recipients of life-giving organ donation, and quite a few heart recipients as well. So this was something that was really powerful, and I wanted to represent this in the exhibition. If we go on to the next one.
Great. And Kristina, you have a minute.
I figured this is good. Okay, so I took there was still this long hallway, and I needed to figure out the rest of the artwork. So I took the crops of the artwork and put them into a program called Repper, which is a pattern making program, and was able to produce these amazing patterns and then turn them into silk tapestries that lined the hallway. So if we go to the very last slide of mine. That's one image you can see of just a few of the silk tapestries. There were 12 of them. There's the heart mural. And so I felt like it just all came together. If you look at Messages of Hope exhibition, at some point there's a link. There's a video of the exhibition, which is really beautiful. My main message to artists: find nonprofits, volunteer, find funding, and have the proposal and your idea of how you can bring art into the setting already in your head. Don't come as a blank slate. And that would be it. Oh, and I'm going to pass on to Jasmine now. Thank you.
Hey everybody, that was so wonderful, Kristina. I'm so excited getting to follow your presentation and talk about more of the hospital side of things. And my name is Jasmine Chu. I use she, her pronouns. I am the art coordinator at Children's Hospital Colorado. And just a really quick kind of like my path to the arts and health journey started when I was 10. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I was in and out of hospitals a lot as a child. And really, hospitals can be such a sterile, clinical, scary space, especially for, for kiddos. And it was really my experiences with art in the hospital that were really life affirming and positive through my experience. And on my journey, I ended up going into museums similar to Antonia, worked in museums, cultural centers, youth support. And I found this job at Children's, and it really, the impacts that I'm able to see art make here is just like so beautiful. Because I mean, it really does foster a sense of belonging in the space, a sense of welcome, a sense of respite and imagination, and just a way to kind of like bring a little bit of light and color into everyone's day. So that's just a little bit about me and my arts and health journey. And now I'll talk about Children's Hospital and the art coordinator role. So Children's Hospital Colorado is a whole enterprise across the state of Colorado. There are 4 hospitals and many outpatient therapy care clinics. We serve not only pediatric population in Colorado, but across the 7-state region, surrounding 7 states. So we have a lot of area to cover and a lot of fun ways that we can engage with arts. So I am the only person in the role of the art coordinator at Children's Hospital. So my role is housed within the art therapy team. I think that's really important for me to make that distinction. And you can see on my slide here, my kind of Venn diagram, it says non-clinical arts engagement. So when you're an artist approaching a health organization, I think it's really important to determine whether or not they already have an established art therapy program. Because if so, a lot of artists come to me and they say, I want to do art therapy in your hospital. And I say, that's great. And I also, are you a licensed art therapist? Because, that is a very different kind of role than a community artist coming in. And as we know, all art has beautiful therapeutic effects, but the role of an art therapist versus the role of community artists are very clearly defined and different. So just like be very aware when you're approaching hospitals and health systems of how you're presenting your program, because you always want to make sure that you're working with art therapists in a productive partnership and that they don't feel like you're trying to do art therapy as an unlicensed artist. So always want to point that out. Very important to remember. And you can also see as the art coordinator, there's a lot of buckets. I have a lot of different things that I am very lucky to get to have a little hand in. So one of the things is collections. So that is managing our archive, of which we have over 5,000 objects just at like my main host hospital, and there's even more across the network. Accessions and deaccessions. A lot of the questions that I get asked from artists, I would say primarily are, how many of your artworks are donations versus purchases? And I would say that what I see come through as individual artists approaching is probably over 50% as donations. Versus people who are approaching for purchase artwork. I do love to support local artists by purchasing art as much as we can, but as a health organization, we're not a big collecting organization. We don't have a lot of budget to spend. So I'd really recommend, if you're looking to sell artwork to a hospital, really focus on like, what are the priorities of the hospital? What are the new build projects? Like, we always have construction going on, right? So if you like can align yourself with, oh, you're getting a new eye clinic. I have a bunch of cute photos of animals and glasses, like perfect. Like, we allocate budget for new construction more than we do for just like purchasing pieces of art out of the blue. So that's my advice for that. And I also get to oversee the art review committee. So Elysian and I get to be together on the art review committee with a bunch of other team members, community members, parents, youth. So that's another way, if you want to get involved with art and healing art in a hospital setting, look to see if there's an art council for your local health system. The art council at Children's Hospital Colorado, that we meet quarterly, and we see over every single acquisition of art and display of art across the system. So it's a big agenda, and we get through it, and it's a way for you to kind of like shape what the environment of artwork is going to be at the hospital, making sure that it is safe, it's aesthetically grounded, and it's compliant with all of our policy. So that's kind of the collections piece. Also, I do a curation, so permanent art plans for the units, special projects like murals and sculptures, and also our temporary exhibitions, like the exhibition that Kristina did at the hospital. And so there's a lot of fun that goes into that, and a lot of different options for displaying your art as well, or partnering with the hospital as a nonprofit. In addition, I am also overseeing kind of our non-clinical artist program. So as a community artist, we really want to encourage people to come in and do like hands-on workshops with the kids. My biggest advice for coming into doing a performance or program at the hospital is that a lot of people assume that a children's hospital is very similar to a school, and they say, well, we have an after-school program that I do. Can I just do that in the hospital? There are parts of that that can work, but I think the expectation setting needs to be kind of very specific for a hospital. I think, as Kristina mentioned, you might have a bunch of people who are interested in coming and they're just not able to come. You might have a lot of different ages with siblings, and there's no way for us to like guarantee you a set of kids that's going to be there all the time. So that's just always something that's important to remember. And also the budgeting around that is very difficult too. So we have grants that we get, and then our grant funding that we had actually just went away for 2025. So now we're kind of like looking at like, okay, how do we keep providing this high quality of program and keep supporting our local creative community, even if the funding pieces aren't always super sustainable or there. And then finally, partnerships. I get to work with so many cool people. I mean, Elisa and Kristina, and I've gotten a chance to be on some panels with Antonia and with Larissa before, so it's very fun. And internally, I get to work with a lot of folks too. Like I said, the creative arts therapy team, the art committee, also diversity, health, equity, inclusion. I think art is such a driver of culture. It's so important to have that lens of DHEI as a very strong part of artwork, volunteer office, foundation, facilities, and construction. So as you can see, there's a lot going on, but it's a lot of fun. Next slide. So that being said, I want to talk about kind of my perspective from the hospital side about Kristina's program. So Messages of Hope was the exhibition that Kristina created. It was so beautiful. And I want to just say, kind of like, based on all of the Venn diagram stuff, when an artist approaches me, first of all, I kind of want to see, okay, like, who is this person? And it was really, really wonderful that I actually had met Kristina just out and about at a gallery opening. And she's friends with an artist that I had worked with on an exhibition previously. So like go out to the gallery openings, like talk to people, like that's like where so many connections happen. So yeah, once I was like, okay, like I know who this person is, like I understand this project, just like keeping in mind, like, is this going to be safe for a hospital setting? And that's, you know, thinking about the materials, thinking about the emotional content of the artworks. Is it mission aligned? Is this something that's really centering our kids and families and communities? And is it within capacity? So because I am one person in this role, kind of overseeing a lot of different things, a lot of times, like Kristina said, it's very helpful if you come and you're like, hey, I have this grant idea, I have this project, like I have a space in mind. I'm like, perfect. Like it's so easy to run with something like that. Although I do understand that some projects that are specific for certain patient populations are definitely going to need a lot more care and development and curation to get there. Next slide. And I also want to point out, like, this is so impactful. Like any sort of art in a hospital setting, whether it's art on the walls or a piano player coming in or a poet that comes to perform, this makes a huge difference in the patient and family experience. And these 3 quotes here are from a QR code survey. I put up a QR code survey in every single exhibition that we do. And these are just 3 direct quotes from people who visited the exhibition. And you can just see how meaningful this really is for people who are maybe going through some of the hardest days of their lives, to have something that they can hold their emotions, because art is just so much bigger than what we can say at a lot of times. So I just wanted to share that, and to thank Kristina for sharing her artwork with us. And also shout out to the Heart Mural. Shout out to the Heart Mural because we do try to collect one piece of artwork from every temporary exhibition that we do. So we do try to support as much as we can. And Kristina very generously sold us this heart mural at basically cost of materials. And it's so special because it has been touched by so many hands that are connected to the hospital.
And Jasmine, we're at time, so if we could just wrap up these next few
Yeah. And yeah, basically just want to say there's lots of different ways you can do it. Murals is one. So this is a mural we have on our lower level. And then next slide. We also have all sorts of different kinds of partnerships with like nonprofits. That's what kind of this slide is about. There is a digital nonprofit called Denver Digerati, Center for the Arts Evergreen, Walk a Mile in Our Shoes, and Colorado Mosaic Artists. So just connecting with your like local organizations, and that's like a good way to kind of like loop in. And do I have anything else? And yeah, we also have sculptures. So this is another way we use Artwork Archive and like scavenger hunts and programmings with our collections feature. And next slide. And like just looking in the future, like digital art is kind of like a big kind of emerging scene right now. And so we're thinking about ways in which we can incorporate that as well. And that's all from me. Thanks, Alicia.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to go kind of quickly in the effort to not take up too much time. So we have a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. I've been absolutely stunned, and it's so joyful to see the number of artists in the chat from all over the world and all over the different kinds of mediums you're all doing. It's just incredibly inspiring. So I'm Larissa Trinder. I oversee the Arts and Medicine Department at New York City Health and Hospitals here in New York City. We are, next slide, please, the largest public hospital system in the country. We have 180 different kinds of languages that we represent, and we have the most diverse staff and patient population in the world. We see everyone regardless of their circumstance, and we also see some of the most complex cases in the city, from people experiencing homelessness to the largest percentage of substance abuse to all sorts of things. So that really orients the Arts and Medicine Department and having a very large job and opportunity in the system. So next slide. So really quickly, we're a very broad, comprehensive strategy. And so if you are interested in learning more, we're on the Bloomberg Connects app, and we also have a website. So today, though, I really, as I said, I'm happy to see all these artists on the call because I wanted to talk specifically about the way that we are engaging artists in the system through 4 specific areas. One is how we support staff wellness. Another is how we contribute to using intentional design principles to curate healing environments. Another is to raise awareness for the strategic priorities of the system. And then the last one is to touch upon this epidemic of loneliness and social isolation by developing a comprehensive civic engagement strategy. Next slide. So the Arts and Medicine Department is a system-wide strategy to support workforce wellness. While we do have some patient and family-oriented programs, the majority of what we're trying to do is address MBI or the Maslow Burnout Index. And we're doing that and using art and cultural interventions to address the 3 specific areas you see here: empathy, connection, and the reduction of stress. And we do that by deploying evidence-based programs, again, using art and cultural interventions. Next slide. So one of our most prominent programs is called Heart of Medicine. We partner with the Brooklyn Museum and the Whitney Museum. And this is an art and empathy building workshop. What happens is the education department in both of those museums comes to the hospital for about an hour and 10 minutes with a licensed clinical art therapist, which is the Sharon here in the blue blazer. Right now, this is an image of workshops we are conducting for our patients on Rikers Island. And we have a very robust presence there. Next slide. And by the way, the art observation, the Heart of Medicine, we have an art collection dating back to the 1930s with over 7,500 pieces. It's the largest non-museum public art collection in the country. And we use that art collection that I'll talk about in a minute to create healing environments. And so the Heart of Medicine takes a piece from that collection to sort of study and engage in conversation. And then there's an art making activity. And then the art therapist kind of goes through a studio process. So there's a sharing out at the end. It's incredibly therapeutic and incredibly beautiful, and really has been proven to be working. And how we know it works is one of the slides is right here. We evaluate before and after, and sometimes in between these sessions to more deeply understand how the participants are really responding. And you can see without me reading through this that the majority of them really feel more connected, and it really is helping to create a more shared experience. Next slide, please. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is our community mural program. We have, this is an incredible partnership. We work with an agency here in New York City called Residency Unlimited that helps our RFQ for our artists. The majority of our artists do come from the New York City area. A lot of that is for practical reasons, but a lot of that is also the public system those are the spaces that we're in. This mural in front of you by Ebony Bolt is going up, I think, next week. It's going to be part of the first large-scale study in partnership with the World Health Organization and the Jameel Art and Health Lab at NYU, looking at how large-scale murals and artists are impacting trust and a sense of belonging in hospital systems. This is in partnership with a system in Nigeria, Slovenia, and the UK, and we'll be talking a lot about this on LinkedIn and other social media, but it's going to be a really great precedent to demonstrate the essential component that artists play on public health. Next slide. This is one that was done during COVID, obviously. You can see with the masks on there. But again, this is an incredible collaboration that really the artist comes in, but it's really not the artist's image, it's the community's image, telling the artist what resonates with them, what their community means to them, what this hospital means to them. And then the artist comes back through a series of focus groups with what they're kind of imagining through their medium. And this goes back and forth a couple times until everyone kind of agrees that this is what it should be. And this is an incredibly busy public space in Brooklyn, and really one of our beautiful mural. Next slide. And then, of course, they always culminate in a beautiful ribbon cutting that brings, again, together community advisory board members, leadership patients, the artist here with the green hair, everyone really celebrating the installation. This is a piece in one of our behavioral health spaces at Kings County. Next slide, please. So we have a health justice initiative that really looks at the strategic priorities of the system. And these 8 pillars are certainly not all of the ones that we approach, but they're definitely ones that have come up in the past and ones in which we really, really are looking to engage artists in helping us illuminate these kinds of core projects that are really important to the hospital system. Next slide. So I'm going to give you 2 really quick case studies. One is that we just partnered with the Museum of Modern Art, had an exhibition by an incredible artist named LaToya Ruby Frazier, who highlighted the work of community health workers, who are workers that connect people to different resources in the community. And she did that highlighting the ones from Johns Hopkins Medical Center. And she ended up engaging our our community health workers in July, bringing about 45 of them through her exhibition. And then in September, we had a panel discussion with her, our head of population health, some other physicians, and some other community health workers. So again, thinking sort of broadly about how art and medicine interventions and departments like ours can really be highlighting and impacting different workforces and different things, and how artists are really helpful in communicating that. Next slide, please. So if you're in New York next week on November 20th, we're having a beautiful event at Carnegie Hall highlighting the work of creative art therapy on Rikers Island with the patients that we serve there. We were able to bring a film crew there for an entire day, filming art drumming and music therapy and dance and movement. And then there'll be also a visual exhibition that evening as well with pieces from our art collection, talking in conversation with images from that day with a panel discussion. So again, really thinking innovatively about how we're highlighting strategic priorities of the system, using artists, using community partners. Next slide, please. So I won't go through this one, but this is an image of one of our asylum seekers. He came from Venezuela. He was a professor and an artist there and was very successful, but fled that country from its terrible situation, and all of a sudden started creating here. And anyways, you can Google this. He was in the New York Times recently, but the Arts and Medicine Department helped put together an exhibition that highlighted his work and other colleagues of his as well. And again, really thinking about the voice of highlighting the complex issues that face society, but that are also under the umbrella of public health. Next slide, please. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm looking at my time, I have about a minute, Elysian. We're really looking very strategically at addressing loneliness and engagement through cultural cultural asset mapping. And what that means is, how can our creative art therapists and our link workers and our community health workers connect patients and families and staff to different cultural assets in their community? So not just the Bronx Museum, for example, but the woman making quilts in her apartment down the street. How are we understanding and locating all of these different kinds of incredible cultural opportunities and connecting them to our communities in the hospital, so that this can address loneliness and social isolation? So there's a million other things I could talk about, but we're really very passionate about making sure that artists play, and not a nicety, but an essential role in healthcare, and they ultimately become a part of the workforce that's very sustainable. So we're working strategically towards that as well, but that's for another webinar. Thanks, Elysian. I'm good.
Thank you, Larissa. Wow. That was not an easy task for our panelists to, share in all the wonderful projects and initiatives that they've been doing within 10 minutes. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time. For those on the webinar, we will send the slides out afterwards. I've also included some resources that we've generated here. You'll receive the links in the slides from our panelists, but also some wonderful artwork archive resources. We have a Wellness for Artists webinar that I hosted about a year ago, a recording. We have an e-guide about arts and health. I have a link to the National Organization for Arts and Health that I mentioned earlier, community in which you can get involved, some articles about using art as a tool for resilience. And it really stuck. I love what you said, Larissa, to close this before we get into the Q&A about that artist and art is not a nicety, but an essential part of this work. Real quick before we get into the Q&A, because there's a lot, and if our panelists are okay staying like an extra 5 minutes so we can address as many questions, that would be wonderful. Here is a resources page about a number of other different types of resources you can find at Artwork Archive. I do have a fun announcement for those that stayed until the very end. Good job. You get to hear it first, folks. We've been working on a call for entry management system that will now be available for those that use our organization accounts, that use our organization plans. So hospitals, nonprofits, public art programs, a number of ways that these opportunities get out there into the world is the organizations hosting these calls and managing them. And that is no small lift. So now we've made it super easy for organizations to do it right from their Artwork Archive account, synced in with their art collection, exhibitions, artist profiles, etc. And for artists, if you're using Artwork Archive, even better, because we make it really easy for you to submit directly to these opportunities. We have a call for entry page where you can find these arts and health opportunities. And if you don't use Artwork Archive, that's fine. We also have a submission account that you can use. So all that being said, let's keep the good, the good work going and make sure that we can continue the wonderful work that arts and healthcare does in our world. I see that we have quite a few questions. So I'm going to transition over into my MC hat and I'm going to run through chronological.
Elise, I can jump in. I've been summarizing some in the background if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Got it. So I want to also commend this panel for squeezing such an incredible amount of information in such a short period of time. One of the most commonly asked questions that came through is how to best reach out to hospitals in my own backyard and more broadly. So if any of you can just kind of quickly comment on kind of what you look for or advice you give artists when approaching, and then kind of a secondary follow-up question to that in the kind of what characteristics you look for is a lot of them are asking, what's the best way to get in contact? You know, when they're doing the research, trying to find those opportunities, who are the right people to reach out to and what are some of the best practices?
Well, I can jump in, so honestly, social media, a lot of people reach out through LinkedIn and through our website, through email and Instagram and other ways that you can find people on social media, but also, our website has all the information and different email addresses and different ways that will highlight job postings. And when our RFQ goes out for our community mural program, usually usually the beginning of one year, so January of this year, there, and you can also ask to be, in our case, on our listserv, and then we frequently send out a lot of messaging for that. But really don't be shy about reaching out because it's definitely, I know it's hard to penetrate a large health system, and that's why the Arts and Medicine Department exists.
Anybody else have any commentary on that to add?
I'll jump in. I'll say it's hard, which is one of the reasons why it's hard to contact the folks that are managing art programs within a hospital, because hospital websites are big, they're burly, and sometimes if there is art being made or exhibited, it doesn't even make the website. And so like going to the website is great, but that may not be the perfect answer. And so there's also a directory on the National Organization for Arts and Health that you can check geographically. And that's one of the things we're trying to do with Artwork Archive is we have these public profiles where you can contact and inquire. And I know Jasmine actually has had artists contact her from her public profile that she hosts, inquiring about how they can get involved with her art program. Did I buy you guys some more time if you have any additional answers?
That's
No,
great.
I think that was great. And Alicia, you touched on this, the NOAA link. Would you say a lot of the people were asking, is there any kind of general database or resource out there where artists can find out about hospitals with art programs in their area?
I'm looking at Antonia because we're on the membership committee. We're hoping that the more members we have, the better that map will be. But right now, to my knowledge, there's no like one database to go access to find hospitals. Kristina, I think, mentioned this. There is something around locality, and I know Gifts of Art. If you're in Michigan, Gifts of Art really focuses on local artists and making local connections. And so they want to work with their local artists.
Yeah,
That's
and that I was going
contacting
to add
your.
on to that. A lot of the gateway to a lot of the organizations we work with are art consultants and other art professionals, and we will be dropping an article over the next few weeks specifically on how to get on their radar, how to get in front of them, best practices, and how to craft your own portfolio and online presence. That I think is going to be really useful and will be applicable to a lot of the same questions you all have in general about how to approach, healing institutions and things like that, because a lot of the same rules apply that will be covered in that article. So something to keep a lookout for.
And this may be a little piecemeal, I don't have one repository to give you, but Museum Exchange is another great platform in which they connect. Larissa uses it. They connect collecting institutions with donors. So if I saw in the questions, if you're looking to donate an artwork, so whether you're a collector or an artist, you upload your artworks to their database, and institutions can see it and view it, and then they can make a pitch for why they should, why they would like it in your collection. So to help cross those geographical boundaries and help people find connections with common interests like arts and health.
Okay.
Do you have any other general thematic questions that you've seen, Justin, as you've been handling Q&A?
No, I think a lot of them were touched on during the course of the discussion. So there was nothing else that kind of bubbled up as a theme. I would say a general note to a lot of those that did ask questions. We will be reviewing that later and trying to get back to as many people as possible. If you've got a lingering question or something you want to follow up on later, please feel free to send an email to info@artworkarchive or contact us via the chat on the platform.
Great.
Oh, sorry. I just did see 5 things come in on a similar theme. And this is for those of you on the panel that work in those, in your respective institutions. A lot of questions about digital art, and are you all open to digital art? Are there any themes you're seeing? Is that more commonly being, looked for or sought after? So any comments on the role digital art plays in healing spaces?
I had never had someone approach me about digital art until like 6 months ago, and now I've had multiple people approach me about digital art in the hospital. A hospital is generally a pretty slow moving machine, so we don't have a lot of the infrastructure to support the display of digital artwork. But we just actually accepted today our first donation of digital artworks into the hospital's collection that will be going on our Get Well networks and iPads first before they hit the walls.
Okay, and then one last question, Lisa, and I just went through about 20 of these. Someone referenced early on some specific considerations to take when in terms of materials and things like that used. Can anybody expand on that when it comes to kind of physical art placed in healing institutions?
It might have been me when I made reference to infection control, which I just threw in there, which is a big topic. But basically, in a clinical setting, we want to make sure that the art doesn't become a source of infection spread. So we don't want porous materials, for example. If an artwork is made of something that isn't wipeable, it's going to need, in our institution, it's going to need to be behind Plex, which is a really easy solution for most framed artworks, even for sculptures, which can be put in big plexi boxes. Some pieces are made out of a material like bronze, for example, that can be waxed and cleaned, and we don't have those issues. But yes, you can't just like, you know, put a fluffy teddy bear in a hospital setting and think that that's okay for the kids to all touch, right? So, and I think, Kristina, you talked about materials as well. Actually, maybe many of us did, but we do think a lot about that. And we do actually have experts on staff, and I will ask them questions sometimes if there's a material that I just don't know if it's safe or not.
Those are the main themes I have, Alicia, and so I'll turn it over to you for close.
Great. I was just going through the Q&As too, and we'll have access to it. And I see your names, and so if there's anything that I can grab, given the work that I do, I'm more than happy to help, because we have taken the time and expertise and knowledge and passion of our panelists and shared it out to you all in this hour. It was such a joy to develop this topic. I am so glad that it was met with such interest. We had over 4,000 registrants. This will be recorded. It will live on our website, so you can send out the link to other friends, colleagues that are interested in the topic. And again, thank you to our incredible panelists. You're an inspiration. I'm so lucky to know you, and I can't wait for everyone to be motivated and go out into the world and hopefully continue the work within arts and healthcare, arts and health. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll all be in touch. Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone.